Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful day. Today is Thursday, February 6th, and a mixed day in the market. Indices were pretty much flat. The S&P notched its third win in a row, but on a modest gain. So it was up 22 points. The Nasdaq was up half a percentage point, and the Russell was down 0.33%. The U.S. yield on the U.S. 10-year Treasury was up 0.27%. Now, I do believe that with the savings and the improvement in the U.S. balance sheet that Doge will bring about, or at least has promised to bring, I think sentiment towards lending the US government will improve, and therefore the yield demanded by the market on things like 10-year treasuries will fall, and that is good for risk assets. So when yields fall, typically risk assets tend to rise. Tesla is at 374. We'll talk about its slowing sales in Europe in a second. We'll also talk about how the Bitcoin miners, specifically Iris Energy, doesn't seem to have changed its plan at all, and they specifically reference DeepSeek in their monthly update. Bitdeer was flat today. NVIDIA is rebounding on the heels of earnings reports from hyperscalers that doubled down on their commitment to investing in AI infrastructure, and therefore the projection for NVIDIA sales after having cratered following the DeepSeek revelation have perhaps improved now. I actually uh, think that investors should approach NVIDIA with caution. It is unlikely that the projections that got it to its highs, so close to 150 per share, it's unlikely that those projections for this year will pan out. So, despite what has been said, I do think that there will be less demand for NVIDIA's chips. Now, gold continues to really do very well. It's at 2,855. And I do think that, in addition to the everything bubble that I've spoken about many times on this channel, I do think that as uncertainty is increasing, political uncertainty and economic uncertainty, gold remains a safe haven for investors, and its price is acting as such, especially in an environment where the other traditional safe haven for investors, the US dollar, is not uh, as resilient as it once was in the minds of many investors, as the balance sheet of the United States has accumulated so much debt on it. But again, perhaps that this perception may change with the improvements that are being made in the fiscal picture in the United States. Uh, Crypto has yet to really recover from the liquidations that it experienced over the weekend. Bitcoin is at 96,000, Doge is at 24 cents, and Solana is at 191. Tomorrow we get the jobs report, and I do believe that it's tough to say, what is good news in this situation, because on the one hand, you have, if the job report turns out to be very strong and the economy is strong, then you can basically kiss the probability of an interest rate cut goodbye. And that's not great for risk assets. But on the other hand, it is telling you that the economy is strong and earnings should remain robust for the foreseeable future. So there's pros and cons to either a a strong jobs report or a weaker one. I do think that probably as it relates to crypto, the name of the game is going to be liquidity. They don't, I mean, the economic situation is not really what's going to determine prices in crypto. And therefore, the market may react positively to a slightly weaker than expected jobs report. Now, if it's very weak, then uh, the market may sell off. But if it's slightly weaker than estimates, then maybe optimism about an interest rate cut increases, and therefore we get optimism about the liquidity picture. We're already seeing cuts in other places of the world, and so maybe optimism about cuts in the United States increases, and that pushes crypto higher. So tomorrow is when the jobs report comes out. So tune in for that. With regards to Tesla, as we mentioned, the comparables to last year are not too pretty with regards to unit sales in Europe specifically. So you can see in places like France and Germany. So in France, the percentage change in units sold, emphasis on units sold, is in France it's down something like 63%. In Germany, it's down close to 60%. In Sweden, it's down 44. Norway, 37. UK, it's down 7.8%. I do believe the reason for this is not that concerning. I understand that I've said this on the channel before. I thought BYD would be a worthy competitor to Tesla. I do think the Chinese models and cars that are flooding Europe are more appropriate for European consumers than Tesla cars are because, number one, they are cheaper and the purchasing power of the average European is falling. And number two, they are smaller. And roads in Europe are a lot smaller than they are in the United States. So it's Chinese models, I think, are better suited for European roads than Tesla models are, which I believe were designed with primarily US roads in mind. And also, the price tag on Tesla models is a lot higher than Chinese models, which um, tend to be a lot cheaper. All this being said, I do believe that when full self driving rolls out, then this calculus may change a lot for consumers, regardless of their location, and not excluding Europe, obviously. So that will be a major selling point for the cars of the future. That is the full self-driving capability, and this may, even out the competition, as well as the introduction of new models by Tesla. So Tesla hatchback is expected to come out in 2025, a smaller car, a cheaper car, and so that might be more competitive with Chinese models. Again, this is a model that is expected to come out in the first half of 2025. In good news related to Tesla, they're hiring engineers for Tesla bot assembly and production in a very aggressive manner. So they are pretty gung ho about getting Optimus robots off of the assembly line this year. And so this is very good. I believe that this will eventually be their largest business, these humanoid robots that it produces. And the demand for them will be basically as many as they can produce. They'll have a very solid profit margin, and there's going to be a lot of players, but there's going to be one or two companies at the top, and I believe Tesla is well positioned to be the top name in this field, which should add eventually trillions of dollars to this company's market cap. Trump Media and Technology Group, which counts Trump as its majority owner, on Thursday said it had filed to register trademarks for new vehicles under its financial tech brand. Each of the exchange traded funds and separately managed accounts will sound familiar to anyone familiar with the president's promises. So Trump Media, which again, the biggest owner, majority owner is Trump himself, plans to offer Made in America ETF, a US energy independence ETF, and Bitcoin Plus. So I think it's safe to say that companies that fit into these ETFs, and this is an obvious conflict of interest. I can't believe this is legal, but I do believe that companies that fit into these ETFs will probably have a favorable disposition vis-a-vis the current administration. And so, you know, Bitcoin stands to benefit from Trump himself being an owner of an ETF that holds Bitcoin. And so, probably regulation, there's additional catalytic regulation that is headed towards Bitcoin in specifically and crypto generally. Now let's talk about IOS Energy's monthly update, January 2025. So the plan hasn't changed for this company. They are using the same language that they've used in previous updates, and they are focusing on the same things. So the DeepSeek revelation has not really changed their main selling point, at least in management's mind, and that is their access to power and the infrastructure to support data centers needed for AI. So in their highlights for the months, 510 megawatts of data center capacity, 53 million in revenue for this month, 13 million in electricity costs. They say hardware profit of 40 million, which is, they're sort of implying this is the gross profit for them. And that's around 75%. But I really don't like looking at this because there's, a big depreciation expense that these Bitcoin miners incur. And so hardware profit is not really, anything to go by when you're trying to figure out how much cash is this company producing, because it requires continued upgrades of their Bitcoin miners, continued raising of additional cash to expand their hash rate to keep up with the ever expanding hash rate of the Bitcoin network. So it's not that easy. It's not like, okay, we're going to mine Bitcoin for X and just pay, 25% in electricity and then the rest is profit. That's not the case. They have 31 exahash installed, so their growth has been quite dramatic in recent months. And with regards to their growth specifically, so they have 31 exahash installed. Their average was 29 in terms of operations because they had to take out some miners, install new ones. They're constantly upgrading. This is the name of the game. With regards to Bitcoin miners. In December, they had 28, or that was their average operating hash rate. In November, it was 19. So you can see how aggressively it's been growing. Bitcoin mined is at 521, basically the same as the Bitcoin mined in December. Revenue per Bitcoin notched up a bit, 99,000 in January, 98,000 in December, 86,000 in November. Obviously, this is a function of Bitcoin's price, nothing they have control over. Electricity cost went up a bit as well to 24,000 in January versus 22,000 in December. And the hardware profit, as we mentioned, 75%, whereas it was 77% in December, 74% in November. They're basically paying spot prices for electricity. So there's going to be a few variations in percentage points from month to month on what they're paying for the electricity that they use. And management commentary I thought was interesting. So they said in January, our Bitcoin mining business continued to deliver strong hardware profits. Again, I don't like talking about hardware profits, they don't mean much. We also announced a new at the market facility that provides flexibility to fund accretive investments. That's to the tune of $1 billion. They can go to the market, basically access the market ATM at the and with a balance of $1 billion. Not a bad place to be in, but it will cause dilution, and it really requires management to actually fund accretive investments, as they are saying, in order to create more shareholder equity than is diluted. The business and investments across the business and continue to explore alternative funding options. Recent announcements regarding Stargate highlight the strategic value of Iron's 2,310 megawatt grid connected power portfolio. That's very important because it's grid connected, the infrastructure is there. If you want to start from scratch, it's going to take you years to, it's not just a matter of money. There's also approvals, securing land, securing connection to the power grid. This takes a lot of time. And so for hyperscalers that want to move fast, this portfolio is very valuable. With an increase in observed demand for our cloud and co-location services since the start of the year and following DeepSeek release. So they wanted to throw that in there. That following DeepSeek release, we're still seeing demand for cloud and co-location services since the start of the year. So nothing has changed, at least for them. We look forward to addressing the market and sharing additional details in our financial performance, etc. All right. So nothing here important. So 750 megawatts is the Childers project. Again, their location in Texas is very important because the Stargate investments, what we know about them so far is one of the top candidates for the first investments is in Texas, which puts Iris Energy in a good spot. Now, 1.4 gigawatt Sweetwater project, multi-gigawatt development pipeline. You can see here the percentage energized is in green. Foundations are here in gray. So they're working on it. I mean, their main two sites are here in Texas, 750 megawatts in Childers, 1,400 in Sweetwater. In Canada, they have much smaller sites. Then you can see here the planned data center growth. So we are here, H1, first half of 2025, planning on, in terms of where we're planning on getting to 810 megawatts, both operating and constructing. And then second half of 2025 to 910. And then the first half of 2026 to 2,300, with a good chunk of that being energization. So there should be a lot of growth here in the data center portfolio for Iris Energy, and assuming the demand for these data centers remains as is, and this is what we are getting in terms of signal from the hyperscalers up until now. I mean, it could be that it's just a matter of not wanting to admit that they perhaps overestimated the amount of investment required. But at the same time, there are some companies like Google that are actually increasing the amount of their investment. I don't think that would happen unless they thought there was an advantage to doing so. So overall, I think a decent update, and we will continue to keep you posted on Iris Energy. Salamat Dawa, Salamat Gaming with Fahid. Salamat Dr. Boss. Um, it really. So, do we expect continued choppiness in the markets and crypto until Trump policies and deregulation takes effect in next few months? I really think that there's a lot of uh, questions with regards to the liquidity picture moving forward, and that's really what's going to determine where the market goes from here. When will the next rate cut come? I think that there's probably going to be some positive surprises that support the market. And I do think that there will be more and more signs that the economy perhaps needs a pick me up. And yeah, the most well known, tried and true pick me up is to make money easier to access and therefore a rate cut. And and that I think will be a good catalyst for the market and perhaps the next leg up here in the the bull phase of the cycle. Salam, brother Hussams. Dawa Quest says all in Dodge then. Yeah, it's depending on how you see it, it's trading at a discount, especially compared to where it was in the last few months. Salam Rashad, nice to see you. I do think that it makes a lot of sense. Tokenization of different assets makes a lot of sense. It'll make them more liquid, create a market for otherwise liquid assets. But there needs to be, I think, regulation on this. I'm generally pro deregulation, but I recognize that some regulation is useful for protecting consumers, and I just don't want us to like swing back to the other extreme where nothing gets regulated, and then we have things like FTX pop up. Thoughts on Lucid? I see them on the road nowadays. Yeah, me too. I do see them every now and then, but it's a good car, but terrible economics. The company's just burning cash. It doesn't make sense. As an investor, it doesn't make sense. Do I like silver? Well, I like gold more. I mean, says Rakaan really likes Lucid. Yeah, I mean, I think that company is going to zero. So, Renegade, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. D says, Assalamu alaikum, I'm retired, need help in figuring out how to manage my Vanguard, moving to halal investments. Can you advise on this and also provide tax advice? If not, any recommendations? Um, well, if you'd like a consultation, D, we do have, you can sign up for a consultation. A link for that is in the description. Is Tesla good at, well, I think you meant 272. We're not at 172. Is Tesla a good buy at 172? Well, I will say this about Tesla. Sorry, at 372, but it is in our buy zone. So make of that what you will. So I do think dollar cost averaging in Tesla at this point, again, not financial advice, but I do think that if you see the vision as I do, then it makes sense. All right, guys. If you enjoyed this do leave a like. If you enjoyed this live, do leave a like and become a PIF member if you haven't already. Until next time, make sure to take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum and peace be upon you all.